Hey guys, today I need to get this off my chest. I've been holding this in for months now, and even though I've played it over 100 times in my head, it still doesn't feel real. The shock, the betrayal, the sheer audacity, I never saw it coming. Not like that. And trust me, I've had my fair share of drama in life. But this was something straight out of a nightmare, except it happened to me, and I lived through every second of it. If you've ever gone through something crazy too, drop a comment and tell me what happened. Okay, deep breath. Let me tell you everything. It was my 33rd birthday. I'd made reservations at my favorite Italian place, the one with the candles in wine bottles and live piano music. I just wanted one peaceful night with the people I loved, my husband, my sister, a couple close friends. No drama. Just laughter, good food, maybe some wine. Instead, I got served a betrayal so deep I still wake up gasping for air. The night started beautifully, honestly. My sister, Rachel, showed up in this silky green dress, glowing. I even complimented her. God, I still remember saying, "You look radiant tonight." And she smiled and said, "It's a special night after all." I thought she meant my birthday. I really did. Everyone was clinking glasses and joking around. My husband, Nick, even held my hand across the table. For a split second, I felt like maybe things were finally okay again between us. That maybe the weird distance and coldness I'd been feeling these past few months had just been stress or work stuff. You know how you try to talk yourself out of paranoia? I'd been doing that daily. Then, right before the dessert came out, Rachel stood up, tapped her spoon to her glass. She looked nervous, but excited. I thought maybe she had a toast or surprise gift. "I have something to say," she said, giggling a little. "Something important." And then she said it. "I'm pregnant." There was a pause, people started clapping, a few surprised gasps. And I smiled too. She's my little sister. I was happy for her. Until she turned to Nick. And it's his. Time froze. I heard the clapping stop, like someone hit mute. My mouth literally dropped open. For a second I thought she was joking. A horrible, sick, messed up joke. My eyes flicked to Nick. He had gone pale. Not shocked. Just frozen. Like he already knew she was going to say it. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I think my body was too stunned to even react. My heart was thudding so loud I could hear it in my ears. My chest got tight like I couldn't breathe. I looked at both of them, Rachel, beaming, eyes watery with pride. And Nick, stiff, trying to muster a smile, but clearly failing. I whispered, "What did you just say?" Rachel looked at me like I was the one making things weird. I said, "It's Nick's. We're having a baby." The rest of the table was silent. My best friend covered her mouth with her hands. One of the waiters awkwardly brought over the birthday cake and just left it there. Nobody sang. I looked at Nick again, searching for something in his face. Remorse, explanation, denial, anything. But he couldn't even meet my eyes. That's when the truth settled in. The cold, sinking truth that this wasn't a prank or misunderstanding. That my husband had gotten my sister pregnant. That she had just told me in public at my birthday dinner, with zero warning. And then, worst of all, the tiniest voice inside me whispered, "You already knew. You just didn't want to believe it." Because yeah, things hadn't been right for a long time. Rachel had been acting weird. Nick had been distant. And I had chosen not to push it. Not to connect the dots. Not to see what was right in front of me. I looked around the table. Nobody knew what to do. It was like a live grenade had gone off and everyone was waiting to see who'd explode first. You know what's funny? I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just sat there, numb. My eyes locked on the flickering candlelight, the stupid icing that said "Happy Birthday" and the growing silence. What was I supposed to do? Start sobbing in front of the creme brulee? Flip the table? My whole world had just cracked wide open, and the worst part was, it had been planned. They'd chosen that moment, that place, to drop the bomb. Because they wanted control of the story. They wanted to make it their moment. But what they didn't know was that I had my own secret too. I guess to make sense of all this, I need to go back a bit. Back to the months leading up to that god-awful night, when things first started to shift, when I started to feel like I was losing my grip on reality. It's not like Nick and I had a perfect marriage. No one does, right? But we were solid. Or, I thought we were. We'd been together for 6 years, married for 3. We had our rituals, Saturday pancakes, late-night Netflix marathons, walks around the lake. We'd been trying to have a baby for nearly 2 years. That was our dream. Or again, so I thought. But somewhere along the way, things started to go cold. Not all at once. It was gradual, like frost creeping in under the door. First, it was the little things. Fewer texts during the day, fewer touches when we passed each other in the kitchen. Then came the excuses. I'm slammed at work. Let's talk about it tomorrow. You're imagining things. It wasn't just him, though. Rachel was changing too. She used to call me every day. I'd hear about her dates, her job drama, her ridiculous roommate. We were close. I practically raised her when Mom checked out after Dad left. But slowly, the calls stopped. When we did talk, she seemed distracted. Like her mind was somewhere else. Like she was hiding something. There was one moment that stuck with me. It was maybe 5 months before the dinner. I'd come home early from work and caught Nick on the back patio, talking on the phone. He didn't hear me open the sliding door. He said, I can't keep doing this. It's too risky. Then silence. I remember asking, who was that? And he just shrugged. Said it was a client. Got annoyed that I even asked. Another time, Rachel came over while Nick was at the store. I asked her if she was seeing anyone, just casually, and she smiled like she had a secret. Maybe, she said. It's complicated. I asked for more, but she changed the subject. Looking back, I think I knew. Deep down, my body knew. My gut was screaming. But when you love 2 people more than anyone else in the world, your brain starts doing gymnastics to protect you. You tell yourself, you're paranoid. You tell yourself, they'd never. You want to believe you're just being sensitive. But then there were the signs I couldn't explain away. Like how Nick suddenly changed his phone password. Or how Rachel started wearing this silver bracelet that looked suspiciously like the one I saw in Nick's Amazon order history. Or how Nick suddenly refused to talk about IVF, even though we'd been saving up for it for months. He said, let's just take a break from all that. And I said, a break from trying for a baby? And he said, yeah, it's too much pressure right now. Too much pressure. Huh. Here I was, taking hormone shots, tracking every cycle, crying in the bathroom when another test came back negative and he wanted a break. At the time, I blamed myself. I thought maybe I was too obsessed with the baby stuff. Maybe I was pushing him away. I even apologized to him. God, I apologized. I cried and told him I'd try to back off, be more present. Meanwhile, he was sneaking around with my sister. It's wild how guilt can be weaponized. How 2 people can gaslight you so effectively that you start questioning your own senses. I remember one night, Rachel came over with takeout, and while we were eating, she said something weird. I was venting about how Nick had been distant, and she said, well, maybe he just needs space. Guys get weird when they feel trapped. I laughed, kind of confused. Trapped? We're married. She shrugged. Yeah, but maybe it's not what he really wants anymore. That line echoed in my head for weeks. Why would she say that? Unless she knew something I didn't. Even now, it makes my skin crawl. How many times did she sit across from me, smiling, eating my food, while she was sleeping with my husband? What kind of person does that? What kind of sister? I'd catch little glances between them too, sometimes. Or how they'd be oddly quiet when I walked into a room. It became a pattern. But again, denial is powerful. I'd think, no, that's crazy. You're being crazy. I didn't want to be the paranoid wife. I didn't want to be the jealous older sister. And I didn't want to face the possibility that the 2 people I trusted most were betraying me in the most humiliating way possible. But there was a moment, one single moment, that finally tipped me over the edge. I found a receipt. It was stuffed in one of Nick's coat pockets, like he didn't even care to hide it properly. It was from a boutique hotel in the city, room for 2, champagne, breakfast package. And the date? A weekend I'd been visiting my mom out of town. I confronted him. Asked him point blank, who were you with? He barely blinked. Said it was a work thing. My boss booked it for me and a client. Yeah, a client. And I believed him. Or pretended to. because I wasn't ready for the truth. But deep down, I knew something was coming. I just didn't know it would come crashing down at my birthday dinner. Who does that? Who announces a secret affair pregnancy at someone else's birthday? Rachel and Nick, apparently. But they had no idea what I had up my sleeve. They thought I was fragile, passive, someone who'd cry and run out of the restaurant. They didn't know I'd already been preparing for this moment. They didn't know I had proof. And they definitely didn't know I was about to ruin their night before they could finish the tiramisu. Rachel wasn't always like this. If you had told me 2 years ago that she'd betray me like this, I would have laughed in your face. She was my baby sister, the one I carried on my hip when mom was too tired to function. The one I sat up with during thunderstorms when she was too scared to sleep. The one I fought our dad for when he tried to take off without saying goodbye. She was messy, impulsive, sure. She lied about dumb things like skipping class or stealing my clothes, but I always chalked that up to immaturity. She made mistakes, but she had a good heart. Or at least I thought she did. I was the one who got her first job interview. I helped her find her first apartment. I even lent her money when she couldn't make rent last year. Money I never saw again, by the way. But I didn't care. She was family. That was enough for me. And now I think, was it ever enough for her? There's this moment I keep replaying in my head. It was about a year before everything blew up. Rachel had just gone through a nasty breakup, some bartender guy who ghosted her after 3 months. She came over to my place and cried into a pint of ice cream while Nick sat in the living room watching football. She looked at me, mascara running down her face, and said, "You're so lucky. You have a good man. You don't know how rare that is." At the time, I smiled. I remember squeezing her hand and saying, "You'll find someone, Rach. Just not him." Now I wonder, was that the moment she decided to take what I had? Because that's what this felt like. Like, she wasn't content being my sister, she wanted to be me. The clothes she started copying. The way she styled her hair like mine. Even the perfume she started wearing, it was my scent. The one Nick used to compliment when we were still happy. Was that coincidence? Or was she trying to slip into my life little by little? The more I thought about it, the more it made sense. She never had stability. Her relationships always crashed and burned. She was always chasing chaos, and I was always the one cleaning it up. And then one day, she decided she didn't want to clean up the mess. She wanted the house. I started picking up on little comments she'd make that felt off. Like, we were at brunch once, and I said something about Nick forgetting our anniversary, and she said, "Honestly, I don't know how you put up with him sometimes." And then a beat later, "But I guess some women just really want the whole wife and kids thing, no matter the cost." I remember frowning, asking, "What does that mean?" She just waved it off. Nothing, I didn't mean anything by it. But she did mean something by it. I know that now. And there were always those strange disappearances. Times when she'd say she couldn't hang out or wasn't feeling well, but then post an Instagram story from a rooftop bar or a hotel lobby, never showing who she was with. Sometimes I'd hear her talking on the phone in the next room when she was staying over. Whispering. Laughing. Once, I caught her ending a call with, "Love you." She said it was her friend Kara. But something about the way she said it felt intimate. Do you know how painful it is to look back on someone you loved and realize they were grooming you for betrayal? Like, all the bonding moments were just rehearsals for the ultimate act of treachery? Because that's what Rachel did. She didn't just steal my husband, she stole years of my memories. Our inside jokes, our trust, our sisterhood. All of it became fake the moment she opened her mouth at that dinner. And the way she smiled when she said it. That's what keeps me up at night. She was proud. Like she was unveiling some beautiful surprise. Like she expected applause. How do you get to that place? How broken do you have to be to believe you're the victim when you're the one sleeping with your sister's husband? There's another memory, one that haunts me now. It was my bridal shower. Rachel was my maid of honor. She gave this big, teary-eyed speech about how happy she was for me. She said, "Nick is the kind of man I dreamed you'd find. And I hope one day I find someone who loves me half as much." She raised her glass. Everyone clapped. And now I think, was she already in love with him then? Was she already planning this? Was I that blind? I think about it every day. How she looked me in the eyes and said she loved me. How she cried when I gave her the Sister of the Year necklace for Christmas. How she hugged me the night I found out I wasn't pregnant, again, and whispered, "It'll happen when it's meant to." Was that her way of saying, "It's not meant to happen for you"? You don't realize how much your sense of reality is built on trust until someone takes a sledgehammer to it. I started questioning everything. Every holiday. Every girls' night. Every shared secret. How many of them were lies? How long had I been the fool? It's not just the cheating. It's not just the baby. It's the knowing. The months and months of deceit. The little performances. The calculated silence. She didn't just break my heart. She broke the person I used to be. And the worst part? She doesn't think she did anything wrong. I wish I could tell you Nick was the kind of man everyone warned me about. But he wasn't. He was charming. Steady. The safe guy. The one my mom finally approved of after years of me dating emotional disasters. He made good money, had no major baggage, didn't flirt with waitresses or disappear for days. He showed up. He stayed. That was what I loved most about him. Nick was always there. Until he wasn't. When we first met, I was coming off the tail end of a breakup that had shattered me. I was raw, exhausted, emotionally threadbare. Nick felt like peace. He listened, asked questions, didn't push. Our relationship started slow, just dinner dates and long walks. No fireworks, no obsessive highs and lows. Just consistency. Stability. He made me feel safe. And I mistook that for loyalty. I remember the first time I realized I loved him. We were in the middle of a grocery store, arguing about pasta sauces. And instead of getting frustrated or rolling his eyes, he just kissed my forehead and said, "You're cute when you're wrong." I laughed so hard, I almost dropped the jar. That's the version of him I married. The man who danced with me in the kitchen at midnight. Who left notes on my car windshield. Who cried with me when our first pregnancy test came back negative. So what happened? When did that man vanish? I think it started after our third failed attempt at conceiving. I was crushed, but trying to stay hopeful. Nick, on the other hand, withdrew. He stopped coming to appointments. He said the pressure was getting to him. I told him we could take a break, but he just shut down completely. At first I thought it was depression. Infertility can destroy people. It drains your finances, your spirit, your sex life. I offered therapy. He refused. I offered space. He took too much. Then came the fights. He'd snap at me over small things. My tone, my timing, my expectations. He accused me of making everything about the baby. Said I was obsessed. That I couldn't see how our marriage was falling apart. But he was the one pulling away. He started working late. Missing dinners. Canceling weekend plans. When I asked, he had ready-made excuses. Quarterly reviews. Team drinks. Traffic. It became a pattern. I'd ask questions, he'd deflect. I'd cry, he'd go silent. And yet, I still defended him. I told my friends, he's just stressed. I told my mom, we're figuring it out. I told myself, it'll get better. I even worried I was being unfair. That maybe I was too wrapped up in our baby journey to see what he needed. But now I realize, Nick liked the image of being the good guy. The loyal husband. The patient partner. But underneath, he was full of resentment. He resented me for the IVF. For the pressure. For wanting something he'd already decided he didn't want with me. And Rachel? She was easy. She didn't need commitment. She didn't demand appointments or medication schedules or calendars. She probably just laughed at his stupid jokes and told him he was a saint for dealing with me. That's the part that burns the most. That he used my pain to justify cheating. I think back to this one night. We were lying in bed after a fight. I had cried myself hoarse. I asked him if he still loved me. He didn't answer. Just turned away and pretended to fall asleep. That silence, it split something in me. I remember staring at the ceiling, wondering if this was just what marriage became, quiet betrayals, unspoken sadness. If everyone secretly carried these cracks inside them. Now I know. That silence wasn't a crack. It was the start of the collapse. But I didn't leave. Why didn't I leave? Because I still loved him. Because I believed in him. Because I thought we were going through a rough patch, not a full-blown affair with my own sister. I feel like a fool for holding on so long, for letting him gaslight me into thinking I was the problem, for apologizing when he was the one who stopped showing up. You want to know something disgusting? I was planning a surprise weekend getaway for our anniversary. I had booked a cabin by the lake. I bought him a stupid monogrammed flask because he liked bourbon. I even wrote a letter. A letter. Let's try again, I wrote. Let's fight for us. I found the letter last week while going through storage. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. Because that version of me, the one who still believed in love, who still believed he loved me, she deserves to be remembered. She didn't see it coming. And honestly, neither did I. Because when you love someone that deeply, you don't prepare for war. You prepare for life, for partnership, for building a family, not for defending yourself from the two people you trusted most in the world. Nick knew exactly what he was doing. He made a choice. And the worst part is, I think he expected me to forgive him. Like I was just some tired wife clinging to dreams of motherhood, so desperate not to be alone that I'd look the other way. But I wasn't that woman anymore. Not after what I found out. Not after what I was about to reveal. Because Nick forgot one very important detail. And when I stood up at that dinner, I was ready to use it like a match on gasoline. I didn't just sit around and let things fall apart. Once I started connecting the dots, once that sinking, sick feeling in my stomach refused to go away, I knew I had to stop ignoring it. I couldn't survive on denial anymore. I had to know, even if it destroyed me. So I started watching. Quietly. Carefully. I didn't accuse. I didn't snoop through phones or scream or beg for the truth. Not yet. I knew if I pushed, they'd just get better at hiding it. Instead, I paid attention. The first thing I did was check our phone records. Nick and I were on the same plan. Not many people realize how much those logs reveal. Even if texts are deleted, the timestamps stay. And Rachel's number? It was everywhere. Random hours. 11:07 p.m. on a Thursday. 6:45 a.m. on a Monday. Once on our wedding anniversary, at 2:13 in the morning. That's when I felt something inside me snap. I started documenting everything. I kept a notebook in my desk drawer. I recorded the dates he worked late, the times Rachel couldn't hang out. I compared them. The overlaps were constant. I created a spreadsheet color-coded. I wish I were joking. Then came the receipts. Literally. One afternoon, I cleaned out Nick's car while he was out running. In the glove compartment, I found a Starbucks receipt. Nothing weird until I noticed the second drink had a note scribbled on it. No whip, extra caramel, Ratch, smiley face. My heart actually stuttered in my chest. But the real turning point? The hotel. I'd had suspicions, sure. But suspicions can still be denied. What I found next couldn't. A friend of mine works in hospitality. I won't say where. One night, after a wine-soaked venting session, she asked if I wanted her to check if Nick had ever booked rooms under his name. I didn't even have to ask. She texted me a week later with a list. 3 bookings. Same hotel. Same room type. 2-night stays. All during weekends I'd been out of town. And one of them aligned with a weekend Rachel had gone to a yoga retreat. I remember just staring at my phone. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, like my body disconnected from itself. Then I started printing everything. Phone logs, receipts, screenshots, the hotel confirmation. I even found a picture from Rachel's Instagram where the hotel art in the background matched exactly what was listed on the hotel's site. They weren't even being careful. It was like they wanted to get caught, or they believed I was too stupid, too loyal to ever look. But the final blow? That came when I checked our medical records. About a year ago, Nick and I had gone through a rough patch trying to conceive. Nothing was working. The pressure was killing us. So we had a long, painful conversation and agreed to stop trying for real. To give ourselves space. To stop chasing something that just wasn't happening. Nick said he'd support that decision on one condition, that he get a vasectomy. It was weird. Sudden. But I thought maybe it was his way of getting closure. Of taking back control over his body after everything we'd been through. He made the appointment. I drove him there. I even held his hand in the waiting room. He had the procedure. I know he did. So when Rachel stood up at my birthday dinner and announced she was pregnant with his baby, I knew she was lying. Or worse, she didn't know she was lying. That's when it all clicked. He never told her. He let her believe he could get her pregnant. Maybe he wanted her to feel special. Maybe he was using it as a way to trap her, to keep her emotionally hooked. Or maybe, and this is the theory that still makes my skin crawl, maybe Rachel was already pregnant by someone else, and Nick offered to take the fall. To protect her. To save her instead of me. But either way, I had proof. Nick was physically incapable of getting her pregnant. I had the medical file. The confirmation. I had the paperwork from the urologist, dated and signed. And I was holding onto it like a grenade with the pin halfway pulled. So I waited. I let Rachel play her big moment. Let her revel in the spotlight with her trembling voice and fake humility. Let her say the words, and it's his, like it was some kind of gift. And I just sat there. Until I stood. And I said, "That's funny, Rachel." Because Nick had a vasectomy 2 years ago. Boom. Silence. She blinked. Looked at me. Looked at Nick. The confusion on her face was genuine. Nick went pale. Then red. I pulled the folded document from my purse and laid it on the table like a magician revealing the final card. "I've got the paperwork," I said. Signed. Stamped. Dated. "You sure it's his?" No one breathed. My friend let out a low, "Oh my God," under her breath. Rachel's jaw literally trembled. Her mouth opened and closed like she couldn't find words. And Nick? He just stared at the table, like a man already sentenced. I felt powerful in that moment, but also sick. Because even though I had the upper hand, it didn't change the fact that I'd been betrayed. That my life was in shambles. That the people I loved had torn me apart for months, and only now were they realizing I wasn't the fool they thought I was. I leaned in and whispered to Rachel, "You might want to get a paternity test. I don't think you're going to like the result." Then I picked up my purse. And I left. Not in tears. Not in rage. But in full control. Because the war they started? I wasn't walking away from it. I was ending it. Walking out of that restaurant felt like walking through fire. I don't even remember driving home. I must have been on autopilot, my brain buzzing, my hands trembling, the adrenaline pumping through every nerve. I was shaking, but I wasn't falling apart. Not yet. I was just hollow. It's strange how quickly you can go from being the center of a celebration to feeling like you never existed. That whole dinner was supposed to be about me. My birthday. My life. But no. Rachel and Nick hijacked it and turned it into a circus, thinking they were in control of the narrative. Until I flipped the script. But that didn't mean the damage was undone. As soon as I got home, I collapsed onto the couch, still in my dress, still wearing the heels I'd bought just for that night. My phone was blowing up, texts from friends, missed calls, even one from Rachel. I ignored them all. I just sat there, staring at nothing. You know what hit me hardest? The silence. For months, I'd been craving peace. Silence from all the suspicion, the arguments, the overthinking. But now that I had it, it felt unbearable. Empty. Like all the air had been sucked out of the room and left nothing behind. Eventually, I opened my texts. First one was from Rachel. "You humiliated me. You didn't have to do that." I stared at it, waiting for the punchline. I humiliated her? No apology. No remorse. Just blame. Then came Nick's. "Can we talk?" No explanation. No denial. Just 3 cold, lifeless words. Like we were business associates and he was trying to reschedule a meeting. I didn't reply. Not yet. The next few days were chaos. My mom called crying. Rachel had apparently told her a very different version of the story, that I'd gone psycho and ruined her moment because I was jealous she was pregnant. Yeah, you read that right. Jealous. As if I hadn't been desperately trying for a child for years. As if I hadn't held her while she sobbed over loser boyfriends. As if she wasn't carrying what she claimed was my husband's baby. My mom asked if it was true about the vasectomy. I said yes, and that I had the paperwork to prove it. She went quiet. Dead quiet. Then she said, "I need time to process this." I almost laughed. She needed time? It didn't take long for the family to split. Some relatives took Rachel's side. Mostly the ones who always saw her as the baby, the fragile one. They said she made a mistake, that she didn't mean to fall in love. Others supported me, but even then, they did it quietly. Like they were afraid of making it worse. Like being cheated on by your sister is just another messy family drama to be managed politely. Meanwhile, the internet? That was a whole other storm. Apparently, someone at the dinner had recorded the announcement. And my reveal. And leaked it. I didn't even know until a coworker pulled me aside and said, "Hey, is this you?" I watched it once. Just once. It was awful. Watching myself sit there, blindsided. Then rising with cold, quiet fury to drop that one line, "That's funny, Rachel." Because Nick had a vasectomy 2 years ago. I looked calm, but I could see it in my eyes. Pain. Deep, bone-deep pain. Comments were wild. Half of them calling Rachel a monster. The other half calling me stone cold for how I handled it. One person even wrote, "This is the plot twist of the year. Netflix, are you watching?" I didn't know whether to laugh or throw up. Rachel messaged me again. "You ruined everything. I don't even know who the father is now. Are you happy?" I didn't respond. Because the truth is, no. I wasn't happy. I wasn't victorious. I was shattered. Even though I had the gotcha moment. Even though I exposed them both in public. Even though they were the ones who lied, cheated, and plotted behind my back. I still felt like I was the one left bleeding. I didn't want revenge. I wanted my life back. My husband. My sister. My future. The version of reality I thought I was living in. And it was gone. There's no guidebook for this kind of betrayal. No therapist handbook for what to do when your sister has a baby with your husband who's supposed to be sterile. I didn't know how to feel. One second I was numb, the next I was sobbing into a pillow until I couldn't breathe. I took time off work. I blocked Rachel and Nick. I stopped answering calls from family. I disappeared. Because for the first time in my life, I had nothing left to say. No strength to fight. No words to fill the silence. Just one relentless question echoing in my head. How could they do this to me? I didn't expect peace, but I also didn't expect what came next. After the silence came the spin. Rachel and Nick didn't just retreat in shame, they doubled down. They started telling their version of the story. One where I was the villain, the manipulator, the cold wife who drove her husband into someone else's arms. Someone else who, conveniently, just happened to be my sister. It started with whispers, mutual friends quietly pulling away, texts that went unanswered, invites that stopped coming. Then the social media posts started. Rachel posted a picture of herself with a hand on her barely there bump, captioned, "Sometimes love grows in the most unexpected places, Dizzy." I nearly threw my phone across the room. Then Nick posted a black and white photo of them sitting on a park bench. No faces, just hands clasped. His caption? "There are no perfect stories, only human ones." Human? Human is forgetting an anniversary. Human is yelling in the middle of a fight. This was calculated. I almost admired the audacity. Almost. But instead, I got angry. Really angry. So I started speaking up. Not in the way they did, not cryptic Instagram captions or vague subtweets. I started telling the truth. To our friends. To our family. To anyone who had the guts to ask. I showed them the timeline. The texts. The receipts. The vasectomy documents. I told them about the months of lies. The emotional manipulation. The fake concern. The way Nick gaslit me into thinking our failing intimacy was my fault. The way Rachel said she looked up to me even while she was sneaking into my marriage bed. The more people learned, the faster the mask slipped. Rachel stopped getting those supportive comments. Nick lost a few business contacts. Apparently, cheating on your wife with her sister doesn't exactly make you look like a model husband to potential clients. But even as the cracks formed in their perfect little love story, I couldn't shake the pain. Because now the truth was out there, but so was my trauma. Public. Shared. Replayed. It was everywhere. People I barely knew felt entitled to message me. "Girl, I saw the clip, are you okay? You're so strong." I could never have handled it like that. At least you exposed them, Queen. And I appreciated the support, really I did. But they didn't see the nights I couldn't sleep. The mornings I couldn't eat. The days I'd stare at a wall, asking myself, how did I let this happen? Because that's the worst part about betrayal. It doesn't just destroy your faith in others. It makes you doubt yourself. I kept thinking, what signs did I miss? Why didn't I act sooner? Was I too trusting? Too naive? Too desperate to be loved? And beneath all of that, the sick, gnawing question. Was I not enough? Even though I knew logically that the betrayal was about them, not me, emotionally, it was impossible to separate. Because how do you compartmentalize pain that came wearing your sister's face? One night, I got a call. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to. It was Rachel. Blocked number. Middle of the night. Her voice was quiet, shaky. I got the test results, she said. I didn't say anything. She sniffled. It's not his. I closed my eyes. Of course it wasn't. I knew it wasn't. I told her it wouldn't be. She let out this soft, pathetic laugh. I guess I messed up worse than I thought. I still didn't speak. Then she asked, do you think I'm a bad person? And for a moment, I felt it. That flicker of the old Rachel. The one who used to cry into my lap after breakups. The one who used to sneak into my bed when we were kids after nightmares. But it passed. I said yes. There was silence on the other end. And then I hung up. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't satisfaction. It was just the truth. A truth she had spent months running from. And maybe, just maybe, it would be the start of her facing it. But it wasn't my job to walk her there anymore. That bridge had burned. I wasn't her sister anymore. She made sure of that. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the fallout. The days after the explosion, when everything that once felt normal was suddenly foreign. My house felt like a museum of lies. Every room held memories that now felt tainted. The couch where Nick and I used to cuddle while binge-watching Stranger Things? That's where I sat crying when I realized he was pulling away. The kitchen counter where I baked birthday cakes for Rachel? The same counter where I'd once poured her a glass of wine while she lied straight to my face. I couldn't stay there anymore. So I packed a bag and moved in with my friend Carmen for a few weeks. She had a guest room, warm lights, a dog that wouldn't stop licking my face when I cried. It was exactly what I needed, comfort without questions. But the outside world kept pushing in. Every day came with more messages, more fallout. My aunt called crying, saying she didn't know who to believe. My cousin sent me a long Facebook message telling me to be the bigger person. Like I was holding a grudge for fun. Like I hadn't been gutted in public by the two people I loved most. And then, the final crack, my mom. She came to see me unannounced. Showed up at Carmen's door holding a pie like this was Thanksgiving, not ground zero. I almost didn't open the door. But I did. She stood there, eyes puffy, lips trembling. I don't know how to fix this, she said. I let her in. We sat on Carmen's couch. The dog curled up between us like a buffer. She apologized. Said she hadn't wanted to pick sides. That Rachel was still her daughter, no matter what. That she couldn't abandon her when she was pregnant and alone. I understood. I really did. But I also needed her to understand me. I said, she destroyed me, Mom. And you watched it happen. That cracked her. She started crying, full-on sobbing. Said she was sorry that she'd failed both of us. That maybe if she'd raised us better, this wouldn't have happened. I wanted to believe that. I wanted to let her off the hook. But the truth? This wasn't about how we were raised. This was about choices. Rachel chose to sleep with my husband. Nick chose to lie to me again and again. And now everyone else had to deal with the wreckage. That includes me. Especially me. After my mom left, I started making moves. Quiet ones. I filed for divorce. I didn't tell Nick. I just had the papers served. According to my lawyer, he was surprisingly cooperative. No contest. No delay. Just signed and sent them back like a man who knew there was nothing left to salvage. Good. I also sent Rachel a letter. Not for closure, but to end things. It said, you and I are no longer family. Not because of the pregnancy. Not even because of the affair. But because when you had the chance to tell me the truth, you chose spectacle. You used my birthday, my life, as a stage. I will never forget that. And I will never forgive it. Do not contact me again. I sealed it. Sent it. Never looked back. And then, I started cleaning house. Literally and metaphorically. I sold the furniture Nick picked out. Took down every picture that had him or Rachel in it. Got a haircut. Signed up for therapy. Started going for long walks without a destination. I needed to feel untethered. Free from every piece of this story that had tried to claim me. And slowly, so slowly, I began to breathe again. I still had moments, of course. Moments where I'd wake up with a jolt, thinking it was all a dream. Moments where I'd see siblings laughing together at a coffee shop and feel a stab so sharp I had to leave. Moments where I'd catch my reflection and barely recognize the woman staring back. But there was also something else. Something unexpected. Strength. Not the kind that roars. The kind that endures. The kind that rises up quietly from beneath the rubble. I'd been gutted. Humiliated. Lied to. Gaslit. Discarded. And I was still standing. Alone. But standing. It's strange how betrayal clarifies things. It wipes away the noise. It strips relationships down to the bone. It shows you exactly who's worth keeping and who never was. Nick and Rachel? They were illusions. Mirrors that only reflected back the parts of me they needed. But now I see myself clearly. And I'm not someone you get to betray and then walk away from like nothing happened. I'm someone who fights. Even when the battle is just to get out of bed. Even when the wound is still bleeding. Even when the world expects you to just move on. I don't move on. I rise. I knew I couldn't fully heal without confronting them. I didn't want to, but I needed to. Because even though I'd made it clear where I stood through the silence, the distance, the divorce papers, I still had pieces of myself tangled in their lies. Questions that clawed at my sanity. Answers only they could give, even if I knew they'd be poisoned. So I started with Nick. I texted him one word. Talk. He responded instantly. We met at a coffee shop a few towns over, neutral ground, where no one would know us, where I could leave at any moment without a scene. I wore a plain hoodie and jeans. No makeup. No armor. I wanted to be real. Nothing else. He looked like hell. Dark circles. Scruffy. That fake polished version of him, the one who used to smooth his shirt and check his reflection every time we left the house, was gone. For once, he looked small. He stood up when I walked in like he was expecting a hug. I just sat down. He didn't speak at first. Just stared into his coffee like it might give him a script. So I broke the silence. Why her? His shoulders slumped. I don't know. Not good enough. So I pressed. When did it start? He winced. After the second round of IVF. I nodded, jaw tight. You said you were too overwhelmed to keep trying, I said, eyes locked on him. But you weren't too overwhelmed to start screwing my sister? He closed his eyes. I was messed up. You know I never wanted kids that way. All the appointments, the pressure. I didn't feel like a man anymore. I blinked. So you decided to feel like one by crawling into bed with my sister? Silence. Then, it wasn't supposed to happen. A bitter laugh escaped me. That's what you tell yourself? That this was an accident. She came onto me. There it was. The coward's refrain. I stared at him. Even if that's true, you made a choice. Repeatedly. Over and over. He didn't deny it. Didn't defend. He just whispered, I hated myself every time. I leaned in. Then why didn't you stop? Tears welled in his eyes, but I felt nothing. Not pity. Not hate. Just exhaustion. I didn't know how, he said. Every time I looked at you, I felt smaller. Like I wasn't enough. I sat back. So instead of rising, you sank. He nodded. I nodded too. That was all I needed. No screaming. No closure speech. Just confirmation that the man I married was weaker than I ever imagined. That his guilt didn't make him less guilty. I stood up. You don't get to rewrite the story, Nick. You weren't a victim. You were a liar. He whispered, I know. And that was that. I walked out, leaving him alone with his regrets. Then came Rachel. She didn't deserve it. She hadn't asked for it. But I needed it. I found her one morning at the park. I'd heard she went there every Thursday, pushing a stroller. The baby was born. A girl. I didn't even know her name. Rachel was sitting on a bench, bouncing her on her knee. She looked tired, pale, like motherhood had swallowed her whole. She saw me and froze. I didn't sit down. I just stood in front of her, arms crossed. "You don't have to say anything," I began. "But I need to." She nodded slowly, eyes wide. "You didn't just sleep with my husband. You stole from me. My trust. My dignity. My sisterhood. And for what?" Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I thought he loved me. And now?" She looked at the baby. "I don't know." I shook my head. "You stood up at my birthday and announced it. Like it was a gift. Like you expected me to be proud." "I was scared," she whispered. "I thought if I didn't tell you, it would somehow be worse." I laughed. Cold, short. "You weaponized my day. My name. My life." "I know," she choked out. I think I was trying to hurt you." That caught me off guard. At least she was honest. "I hated being your shadow," she said. "You were always the strong one. The good one. Mom's favorite. Everyone's favorite." I stared at her. "So you tried to become me?" "I wanted something that was mine. Something you couldn't control." I felt the urge to slap her eyes, hot and sharp, but I didn't. Because I finally saw her for what she was. Small. Wounded. Insecure. Still stuck in some warped version of our childhood where love was scarce and competition was survival. I stepped back. "You don't owe me an apology," I said. "You owe that to your daughter. Because she didn't ask to be born into a war zone." She nodded. "Don't contact me again." I turned. And I walked away. No tears. No final words. Just the sound of a baby crying behind me. And for once, I didn't look back. Picking up the pieces wasn't a straight line. I wish I could tell you there was a moment where everything snapped into place. That I woke up one morning full of peace, strength, and forgiveness. But healing doesn't work that way. Some days, I felt empowered, like I'd survived something impossible. I'd leave the house, get my coffee, smile at strangers. I'd think, I'm doing it. I'm living again. Other days, I couldn't even make it out of bed. A song, a smell, a photo buried deep in a drawer, it could take me out in seconds. It was like grief on a loop, dragging me under just when I thought I was swimming free. Grief not just for Nick, or even for Rachel, but for me. The version of me that believed in them. The version that believed love meant safety. The version that thought family meant forever. I had to mourn her too. But somewhere in the rubble, something else started to grow. Not rage. Not numbness. Clarity. I started writing in a journal. At first it was messy, angry, just scribbles of why, and how could you, and I hate you both. But over time, the words softened. They became questions I asked myself. What do I want now? What does peace look like? Who am I without their betrayal defining me? And one day I wrote this. I am not what they did to me. I am what I chose to become after. That became my mantra. I repeated it every morning. I started therapy, real therapy, with someone who didn't coddle me or push toxic positivity. She helped me unpack the shame, the patterns, the boundaries I'd never learned to hold. I realized I'd spent my whole life bending to make other people comfortable, to make Rachel feel less insecure, to make Nick feel more manly, to be the glue, the fixer, the one who holds everything together. But glue can't hold when everyone else is trying to shatter you. So I stopped trying to hold it all together. I let it fall apart. And in the wreckage, I started building something new. I moved into a smaller apartment. Just me and my thoughts. I painted the walls warm colors. I bought a thrifted dining table and told myself, only good memories will be made here. I reconnected with old friends. The ones I'd neglected during the Nick years. I told them everything. Some cried with me. Some told me their own betrayal stories. Turns out, we all carry scars. Some just hide deeper than others. I stopped checking Rachel's socials. I don't know if she's happy. I don't care. I heard from a mutual friend that Nick moved out of town. Took a job somewhere far. That he doesn't really talk to anyone anymore. That he's quiet. Good. Let him sit with the silence he used to weaponize against me. But the most unexpected thing? One day, I found myself smiling. Genuinely smiling. I was walking past a bookstore, saw a little girl holding her dad's hand, and instead of feeling that sharp stab of what I lost, I just felt warmth, hope. The ache is still there, don't get me wrong. But now it lives beside something else. Possibility. Because I'm still here. Still breathing. Still capable of love, even if it looks different now. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if I'll ever get married again. If I'll ever have a child of my own. If I'll ever fully trust someone like that again. But I do know this. I will never betray myself again the way they betrayed me. I will listen to my gut. I will hold my boundaries. I will choose people who choose me. And I will keep rising. Even from the ashes. Even when it still hurts. Especially then. It's strange, looking back on everything now. Like watching a film you once starred in, but barely recognized the character. I think about that version of me sitting in the restaurant, blinking in disbelief as her whole world collapsed, and I want to reach through time and hold her. Tell her she'll survive. Tell her the pain will not destroy her. That it will, in time, shape her into someone stronger, someone softer in all the right places and tougher in all the others. What I went through didn't just break my heart, it broke my sense of self. When you're betrayed by the people you trusted most, it shakes your very identity. You question every memory, every moment, every version of reality you thought you were living in. But healing isn't about erasing that pain. It's about learning how to carry it without letting it define you. These days, the pain is quieter. Not gone, not forgotten, but manageable. It lives in a box I only open when I choose to. It no longer chooses me. And in the space where grief once lived, something beautiful is beginning to grow. Forgiveness, not for them, but for myself. For the times I didn't see it. For the times I stayed too long. For the love I gave that wasn't returned. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean excusing. It means I am releasing the weight that was never mine to carry. I'm allowing myself the peace that they tried to steal. If you're going through something similar, please know this. You are not alone. You are not weak for loving deeply. You are not foolish for trusting. And you are not broken beyond repair. There is life after betrayal. There is joy after devastation. And there is always, always a way forward. End of script. Thank you for listening.